As usual, when we're doing things virtually, if you have a device, you may have some hiccups, but we are here and we are so excited to get started today. Thank you all, first of all, for joining us. As some of you may know or may not know, I am Sabria Hassan, the Director of Programs at the Banneker-Douglass-Tubman Museum. And I am truly excited for tonight's very important and timely conversation. At the museum, we're dedicated to preserving, documenting, and interpreting the rich cultural heritage of African Americans throughout the state of Maryland. At the museum, we stand on the shoulders of greats like Benjamin Banneker, Harriet Tubman, of course, Frederick Douglass, and so many other visionaries who embodied the relentless pursuit of knowledge, freedom, and justice. We strive to be a beacon of education and a catalyst for dialogue, ensuring these essential stories of struggle, triumph, and profound contribution are central to our understanding of American history. As the nation begins to mark the 250th anniversary, we felt it was critical to honor the legacy of Black servicemen and women, past, present, and future, this Veterans Day. And at a moment when the relationship between the military and our communities is so visible, we wanted to create a space to hear from those who have lived the complex reality of service. So today we're here to listen, to learn, and to engage with these vital perspectives. Before I hand the mic over to Mr. Abiola Akintola, our amazing education coordinator and tonight's moderator, I'd like to briefly outline our program for this evening. So for the next hour, we'll hear from our distinguished panelists, and then we'll dedicate the final 30 minutes to questions and comments. So we encourage you to please use the question and answer function to submit your questions and comments, and we'll do our best to address as many as possible. The chat feature is also open and being monitored, so feel free to use that for broader conversation as well. And then finally, I would be remiss if I did not extend my gratitude to those who make these programs and other programs at the museum possible. Our dedicated museum staff, I think I already saw our illustrious executive director, Chanel Johnson, is here with us. The Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture, and then, of course, the Banneker-Douglass-Tubman Museum Foundation. So without further ado, I would love to hand the mic over to Mr. Abiola Akintola.
Thank you, Sabria. I appreciate that. Everybody, thank you for attending, both the panelists and the audience. Again, Abiola Akintola, the educational coordinator here at the Banneker-Douglass-Tubman Museum. As well, I am a veteran, again, having spent 8 years in the U.S. Army National Guard, specifically the Maryland Army National Guard, which involved 2 deployments in which including a peacekeeping mission in Kosovo as part of NATO forces, as well as a tour in Iraq during Operation Iraqi Freedom. Want to introduce the various panelists, and then we'll continue with the discussion. With us, we have Dr. Walter McGill. Dr. Walter McGill was born in Greenville, Mississippi, raised in Jefferson City, Missouri, and Baltimore, Maryland. Dr. McGill was the first African American to graduate from the previously all-white and all-male Baltimore City College High School in 1955. Dr. Gill earned a Bachelor in Science from Morgan State College and a Master's and Doctorate from Syracuse University. A former officer in the Army, in the U.S. Army, Dr. Gill is an art and social studies teacher, professor, artist, actor, and author. For 20 years, Dr. McGill was a university administrator at Bowie State University, Morgan State University, University of Nebraska, and Millersville University. For the past 13 years, Dr. Gill has been an adjunct professor at Towson University in the Department of Early Childhood Education, where he teaches a course in diversity. He also advocates for children in foster care. In 2022, Dr. Gill was appointed by Governor Lawrence Hogan to be a commissioner on the Maryland Commission of African American History and Culture. Next, we have Jeanette Duncan. Born and raised in Jacksonville, North Carolina, Jeanette honorably served 21 years in the United States Air Force in support of the National Security Agency. During her military career, she held positions including mission supervisor, collector, satellite system supervisor, and non-commissioned officer in charge. Following her retirement from the Air Force in 2011, she continued her civilian career at the National Security Agency, where she served in roles of increasing responsibility and impact, positions including branch chief, anti-harassment coordinator, program manager, and senior investigator in the Office of the Inspector General. Mrs. Duncan holds a Bachelor of Science in Psychology from the University of Maryland Global Campus and Associate of Applied Science in Communication Application Technology from the Community College of the Air Force. Since retirement, Jeanette works with 2CM Technologies, LLC, as Community Outreach and Team Building Coordinator, where she leads the philanthropic diversity and mentoring initiatives of the company. In addition, she's co-founder and vice chairperson of 2CM Dreams, the 501c3 nonprofit arm of 2CM Technology, dedicated to expanding opportunities for underserved youth through education, mentorship, and community partnership. Next, we have Thomas Porter, former Navy dental technician, born in Alabama, raised in Cincinnati, Ohio. Thomas Porter has held administrative and teaching positions at Ohio University, Antioch College, Howard University, and Federal City College, which is now the University of the District of Columbia. He also served as Dean of African American Studies at Ohio University, the Executive Director of the Martin Luther King's Jr. Center for Social Change in Atlanta, Georgia, Director of the Antioch Graduate School of Education, and General Manager of WPFW 89.3 FM in Washington, D.C. Since retirement, Mr. Porter has often requested for public speaking engagements on social, cultural, and public policy issues. We will also have Herbert Mack, former Army and Army National Guard nuclear biological chemical specialist. He's a native of New York, entered into the United States Army in February 1998. Mr. Mack held numerous leadership and staff positions to include Section NCOIC, Detachment Sergeant, and Battalion Chemical, Biological, Radioactive, Nuclear Emergency NCO, Explosive NCO. Uh, Mack's assignments include overseas tours to South Korea and deployments to Kosovo and Iraq. Um, Upon his successful completion of his military service and with the help of the Montgomery GI Bill, Mr. Mack earned his Bachelor's of Science in Social Sciences from the University of Bridgeport, a master's degree in Homeland Security Management at Long Island University, and various industry observed certifications. Mr. Mack has worked as a safety and health compliance officer with the U.S. Department of Labor, occupational safety, health and administration, and safety program manager with the Pentagon Force Protection Agency. Additionally, Mr. Mack is the owner of Pro Edge Safety, an occupational safety and health training firm based in the New York metropolitan area. Uh, Again, thanks to all of you for taking time um, to speak today. Just real quickly, the reason I wanted to do this, and this is something I've been wanting to do for a while. The primary inspiration was a book by Wallace Terry uh, called Bloods. It was a series of interviews that Wallace Terry, who was a uh, black journalist based in Washington D.C., he interviewed a number of black veterans of the Vietnam War, various branches, of the military, various positions, various ranks. Um, for those who didn't know, uh, or for those who are familiar with the movie Dead Presidents, uh, that movie was based off of a story, one of the stories in Wallace Terry's book Bloods. Um, Reading that while I was in the military, um, it spoke to me in terms of the various experiences that uh, the subjects were going through. I wanted for the longest to do kind of a revisiting of those topics in the book, but also an update as well. For example, uh, there were no black women interviewed in the book, so wanted to make sure that black women were included, and just also, but just different time frames, different theaters of war, different environments. So again, I appreciate you all uh, taking the time to represent uh, this vision that I've had for so long. And I also appreciate Sabria and the museum for allowing me to make this happen finally. So, um, wanting to start off with Dr. Gill being a being the representation for the Maryland Commission of African American History and Culture. We'll start off with you, Dr. Gill. Um, as a commissioner, as part of the Commission of African American History and Culture, and as we are about to start celebrating 250 years of this country's history, could you start us off by highlighting possibly one pivotal but perhaps lesser known moment with regards to Black military history in this country that you believe was a true turning point, and why that sticks out for you as a turning point?
I will, good evening. Good evening, one and all. Walter Arthur Harris Gill. I was in the U.S. Army, the 19th Engineer Battalion. As an officer, and I received my training from the ROTC at Morgan State University. I'd like to make a general statement about the military. It was formed 250 years ago, 1775, and it was part of, as a result of the Continental Congress. The fact that Africans, freemen, have served, African Americans, blacks, Negroes, have served in every war since the first one. The Revolutionary War, the war against Native Americans, the War of 1812, Mexican-American War, Spanish-American War, World War I, World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Gulf War, the war in Afghanistan, the Iraqi War, and unfortunately the war that seems to be existing now against the Islamic State, as has been written about and is online. I think the most significant event was President Harry Truman signing Executive Order 9981, which abolished racial segregation in the armed forces. That was 1947. And it took a long time for that to really become integrated. It's similar to Brown versus Board of Education. Although it happened in 1954, it was many years before people saw the effects of it. But most Caucasians moving out of the city and away from neighborhood schools. In terms of the executive order, the racial discrimination continued for years. And I'll give you an example of that a little later on this evening and answering one of the questions. But that's an overview, and the highlight being President Truman's Executive Order 9981. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Dr. McGill. Dr. Gill, excuse me. Um, want to move on to Miss Duncan. Again, definitely wanted to make sure that um, the Black female voice was represented in this. That was definitely an important part for me in doing this. Um, Mrs. Duncan, um, you served in the Air Force for 21 years, and you now lead a nonprofit. From your perspective, what were the most significant barriers for yourself and other Black women in the military, and what unique strengths did they bring that help break those barriers down? And how does that inform your nonprofit work today?
Um, well, one of the the barriers or obstacles that I and tons of Black women had to deal with serving in the military was hair and even weight standards. For obvious reasons, you know, we had to conform to a standard that didn't take into consideration our unique hair textures or our equally unique body types. So being a young 20-year-old coming into the military to fit into a standard that was not my own, that was never my own, was a constant challenge. You had to have your hair pulled back a certain way. It couldn't be, you know, look as natural as it is today. When there were heightened weight standards, it didn't take into consideration the makeup of an African American woman's body. So there were tons of times where you had to have self-confidence and understand that just because you didn't conform to um, these standards that weren't made for us, that you were still as important as your peers. The other obstacle was really a lack of opportunities. That was really the biggest one. We were all competing for the same very small piece of the pie. We as a woman, we had, you know, I had two strikes against me. Not only was I Black, but I was a woman. So I grew up in the intelligence career field. And I went to technical training school, and I remember I was learning how to copy Morse code with paper and pencil. That was telling my age back there in the military. But I progressed to being a collector utilizing multi-million dollar, billion dollar intelligence gathering systems, and eventually managing and developing and overseeing collection requirements utilizing those systems. But most of the meetings that I attended, I was either the only African American in the room, and most certainly the only female. So when we had to make decisions about collection platforms and what resources that we were going to use to collect against our adversaries, I was definitely underrepresented in the room, but I had to make sure because I was one of the quote unquote lucky ones to have that opportunity, that I didn't mess it up. So I promised myself that I would never show up as the weakest link to work. I would stay late. I would prepare. I would over prepare. I would plan ahead for the next day's meeting, even after I spent the day um, doing the regular work that I had to do. And it was because not only did I not want to be the weakest link, but other minorities, other women, more importantly, the mission and the warfighter, they relied on me getting my answers right when those officers, when the warfighter needed me to have the right answers, I had to have the right answers. There was no room for mistake. So showing up any less than prepared was not an option, not only for myself, but for those that needed me to shine so that they would eventually have the opportunity to shine as well. So that mindset It does. It influences everything that I do to this day. People are always watching. People, they're going to cheer me on when I succeed, but there are also those people that cheer me on when if I fail. And 2CM Dreams, our nonprofit that you were mentioning, Abiola, our vision is a world where every child, regardless of their zip code, they have the opportunity, the tools, the inspiration to dream beyond their circumstances and to build a future full of purpose, confidence, and possibility. We want to give voice and confidence and purpose to kids from less desirable zip codes, kids that struggle to see their futures as equally important, kids who still feel like the world is not tilted in their favor. We want to give them that opportunity to dream past their current situations. So again, just like when I was making decisions to support the warfighter, I have to show up equally prepared, just as prepared as I'm building relationships and building networks, so that when we show up as a Black nonprofit, that we're showing up better than our peers, that we're showing up better than other nonprofits out there, because we owe it to those kids that need us.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for that, Mrs. Duncan. Um, Mr. Porter, and for full disclosure, I consider Tom Porter to be a mentor of mine. Actually, he and I met right before I entered in the military, and has been a great help, uh, both in my military and personal and academic lives. Um, so, Tom, as a political commentator, you articulate the experience of Black people here and abroad. Uh, how does the dual struggle for freedom manifest itself for African American service members? And is the fight for full equality within uh, the ranks in society still a reality? Tom, we can't hear you.
You're muted, Mr. Porter.
Yeah, yeah. Unmute yourself, Tom. Turn on your mic, Tom. Okay. Well, while Tom's sorting that out, we'll go to Mac real quick. And for full disclosure, Mac is what we call in military vernacular, my battle buddy. He and I met in so that had to be what 2003,
It has Will.
2003. Well, no, because so we went to Kosovo. That was 04. So I
Yeah, that
guess it
was
was
04. Yep.
yeah, 2004 is when we met, and we were with again both in the Maryland Army National Guard, and we're in Kosovo together, 9-month deployment for the K4 NATO
Oh
peacekeeping
yeah.
mission.
Mhm.
So, Mac, um, you you focused your career both as in the military and in the civilian space on safety.
Mhm.
When we talk about Black military personnel, we talk about um, units like the Buffalo Soldiers, the Tuskegee Airmen, the Harlem Hellfighters. All of these are iconic figures with regards to service in the face of adversity, both internal and external adversity. How does the legacy of these various Black um, members of the military, how does their legacy of resilience and professionalism inform your own approach to leadership and safety, both while you were in uniform and now in your civilian career?
You know, I would say with that question, more so that basically for me, it would be standing up for something, standing for something. Not only embracing that you are an American, being so a Black American, but you're still an American, so as well. But just being to stand up for what you believe in and what you in your heart know what is true.
Okay. Okay. All right. Um, Thank you for that. And Tom, I guess you can hear it. We can hear you and
Yeah, I
you can hear
think
us now,
I
right?
have. I think, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Well, then I'm
So,
unmuted. Sorry
okay,
about
great.
that, folks.
No problem. No problem. So, get to you, Tom. So again, the dual struggle for freedom. How does that manifest for uh Black members of the military? And is the fight for full equality within the ranks in society still a reality?
Oh, without a doubt. And I can only speak of my tenure in the military, which was very short. I went in and at the age of 17 in what was called a kiddie cruise. You go in when you're 17, you get out the day before you're 21. Uh,
Oh.
and I had different experiences. I went to boot camp at Great Lakes. I was honor man for my boot camp company, and when the company elected me honor man, the leader of our group, I forget what they called him at boot camp. He was the enlisted man, but he was the leader. He called me up front instead of congratulating me. He told me that I was an F up, and that was only because I was Black, and the company was almost all white. And that was my first experience with racism. Uh, I went to dental technician school in California, which was was okay because we were in California, but I spent the bulk of my time in a little town called Milton, Florida, about 35 miles outside of Pensacola. And this was in the late 50s. And for instance, the bus that took us back and forth to the base from town, the Black sailors had to wait outside. We couldn't go in. It was the USO. We couldn't
Mm.
we couldn't go in at that point. And in fact, we spent a lot of time that I was in there and really fighting racism in the military. Uh, Things would happen like white women are going to be using the base pool today, so Black sailors should stay away from the pool. I mean, these were
Oh
times
wow.
that they didn't hide it. I mean,
Right.
we were in the South, they didn't hide it. In fact, we had a couple of serious fights uh, while I was there, and uh, they in those days in the Navy, at least where I was, uh, they did everything they could to not give Black sailors honorable discharges. And
Mm.
as a matter of fact, they would wait close to time for you to get out, and if you messed up, if you didn't get back in time, that was AWOL. So a lot of the Black sailors, a lot of men that I served with, got less than desirable discharges. I stayed on the base about a month before the 23rd of October, which is the day before I was 21. And on the 23rd of October, I grabbed my peak coat and my watch cap, which I still wear one every day, and left everything in the locker, got a train going headed to Cincinnati. So my
Oh wow.
experience in the military was, especially in Florida at that time, was no different than what was going on outside of the military. It was racist. Um, Most of the leaders in the military were Southerners,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mhm.
and so I spent. You know me, Abiola.
Yes.
I didn't tolerate much then. I don't tolerate much now.
I can only imagine.
So I spent a lot of time. I mean, if you said blacks, in fact, when they said black sailors couldn't come to the pool because I grabbed 3 of my buddies and we ran and jumped in the pool because I had to go to a captain's mass. So and I don't think the military. In fact, I know it's worse under the present leadership in the White House. So I can't really talk about the military today, and I really can't, other than the time that I was in the military. Uh, it was a good period for me because I was stuck on this base in the South, and I just read. I read for 2.5 years. I would read books about all of the women, Tess of D'Urberville's, Madame Bovary, Maggie, any book that had been written about women. Then I read every book that had ever been banned. And so when I did go to college after I got out of the military, I was well read.
Okay. So make good use of your free time. That's all right. That's all right. Want to get back to Mrs. Duncan. Jeanette, who would you consider? Because you talked about um, you know, having just certain aspects of your own very being that were a challenge being in this particular environment that you found yourself in. Did you have any mentors, any role models while you were in the Air Force? And um, if so, what did they teach you with regards to navigating your career as a Black woman? And that mentorship, that guidance, how have you paid that forward?
So I have been blessed beyond measure for the positive Black women that have been in my life in the military. As a matter of fact, one of my prior supervisors, Master Sergeant Gay Stokes, is online
Oh,
in
wonderful, wonderful.
comments. And just to have um, one because there wasn't a lot of us, so especially in the intel career field that we were in.
Okay.
So when you had the opportunity to come in, um, and these confident Black women who carried themselves with distinction, who demanded that from you also. But also they were there to cheer you on. They were there to hold you accountable. Um, the things that my prior supervisor Gay and I talked about, it wasn't just things like, how I'm doing at work. She made it her job to know me as a person outside of work. And I was blessed to have a lot of mentors and now still current friends like that. But I will say that what I liked the most about growing up, I call it growing up. I joined the military in 1990 when I was 19 years old. And I did 21 years. So I was this young, think I knew it all, young girl from Jacksonville, North Carolina, coming in, and you're not going to tell me anything, and full of mouth and sass and everything else like that. But I found my people. I found other women who were willing to allow me to be me. They were willing to allow me to grow. And they saw potential in me sometimes when I wouldn't even get out of my own way. But I have to also say that because I am the daughter of a Marine, my dad served in the Marine Corps, and my mother was also the secretary for many Marine Corps base commanding generals on Camp Lejeune. We grew up with a strong sense of community. So it really did shape how I moved through the world. It shaped how I moved in my own military career. And it really helped me to also want to foster a blended community, because so often we show up with our blinders on and only want to hang out with our own people and think that we can only learn from our own people. And I think that's where we do ourselves a huge disservice, especially as a Black woman in the military. So if there was someone who showed a vested interest in me, I didn't care what color they were, what they looked like, what they sounded like, as long as they were carrying themselves in a way that was respectable. The military members on here will agree, when you have nothing else, your character is everything. So that's how I always judged everybody, by their character, how they showed up. So in addition to the sisters, I call them the Air Force sisters and mentors that I had, there's one person who really stood out to me, and she was a civilian lady. I was still in the military at this time, but we were going into a meeting, again, one of those high-level meetings, and we're talking about intelligence platforms and how we're going to use our resources. And I, as so many other military people, will go into a conference room. It could be any conference room anywhere, and you take your seat in the chair, on the wall, around the big table, because you think that's where all the important people sit. And I took my seat on the wall. It was just the two of us, and Anne, she stood over me and she demanded to know, why are you always doing that? Why are you sitting here on the wall? And she told me, she said, you're the one with the answers. I'm just coming because I'm the boss, but you're the one with the answers. She said, you need to sit at the table. And from here on out, you always need to believe that that is your seat. You belong at that table. So I took that physically, metaphorically. I always have a place at the table. I always have something important to say, and I'm going to own it. And I'm going to speak with confidence, even when I don't have confidence. And that is something that, when I retired, while I was in the military, while I was a contractor, while I was as a civilian, even now, I always try to encourage, especially women, you need to be at this table with me. When I would go and move about the agency and conduct my business, I was always bringing somebody with me. If I saw somebody at a meeting, I would always encourage them to sit with me at the table. I wanted them, especially our women, to be just as comfortable sitting at that table as I was. And that is what I bring forward even today with our nonprofit, 2CM Dreams. Just recently, this past August, we had the opportunity to sponsor sailing opportunities for young kids from underserved communities out here on the Chesapeake Bay. And there was nothing that made me more proud than when a local news agency came out to interview, and I was able to put these young girls in front of the camera. And the first thing they said, is this going to be on TV? Is this going to be like on TV in my house? They just couldn't fathom that they were going to be on the TV. And I was standing back there watching them be interviewed and articulating their excitement, the things that they learned, how they progressed through a week of sailing, and the confidence that they had. And that is what the end goal was. From when Anne told me that I have a seat at the table, our young girls have a place in front of the camera. The shy one had a place behind the camera, operating the camera. And we always want to make sure that no matter where we're operating as our nonprofit, that these kids from underserved communities have a voice.
Wow, I really appreciate all of that, Jeanette. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. So here's a question I wanted to ask, but we have a guest asking it, so I'm just going to take it. And of course, it's very, very real time, considering what's going on right now in American society. So both Mark Twyman and I would like to ask all of you, with the current use by the current president of National Guardsmen to police various communities throughout the United States. How, and this again, this is for all of you, how would you advise uh, Black National Guardsmen if they were if they're ordered, because there's no don't really asking. He's not, you get told pretty much to police communities of color, and how would you have managed that scenario had you uh, still, if you were still serving, and anybody can talk about that or give their answer.
Well, we used to have a saying in SNCC, which side are you on, boy? Which side are you on? I mean, I think these are times, particularly for African Americans, whether they be in the United States or around the world, to know what side you're on. I mean, it's very, very clear that at least under the present administration, this country is going in the wrong direction. And I see these brothers walking around DC with their guns and what have you. And I'd like to really ask them, what are you going to do when they tell you? And I say this to even in Africa, where they have like 100 and some military bases, which is, and a lot of the people who are in the military are Black. You have to decide. And saying that I'm following orders don't cut it. I mean, that's what the Nazis said when they were exterminating the Jews, that they were only following orders. I think you have to. I think you have to choose, and you have to choose what side you're on. And I've always known what side that I was on.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything to say
I
about the
do,
topic?
but I would say with that, you almost have to kind of. I know you have to be like what you're saying, like what side that you're on, but there's a lot of groupthink in the military. So you're actually when you're out there, patrolling the streets, you're actually protecting. For me, you would actually be protecting the people that you're serving with, not necessarily people that's out on the streets. Like that you're supposed to be protecting. You're protecting your buddies, and that's how you're looking at it. You're protecting your buddies, not necessarily I'm patrolling.
And I see it from another angle. My husband and I, we would talk about, um, the Nazis and how did it get that to where it was. They're way outnumbered, according to people that are there. When but but nobody stood up or in small pockets. And we're kind of living that out today. All of us here online, us prior veterans, established people, we see all of the rights that are being stripped from us, the things that are happening to us, and we're frozen. I'm not out pushing back on anything. I'm not leading the charge like I was in the military. Um, I could actually see how Hitler and the Nazis and everything progressed because people are in fear. So to expect our young military who have families, who have loved ones to take care of, who are just trying to survive themselves, to hold them to a higher standard than we hold ourselves. We're not, active duty. We could just as well stand up against what we see going on out there, and we do not. So to put that back on our military members who have sworn an oath to protect and defend, but now they're in this situation where they might have to go out and protect and defend their brothers and sisters in arms against family members or friends or people they know in the street. That's a terrible position to expect anybody to be in. It's easy for us to Monday morning quarterback when we're sitting here safe in our own homes. But there is no win, and we hear on the news that these military people, these service members, they can disobey an unlawful order, which they are unlawful orders, but they still have a family to provide for. So what would we be asking them to give up? What side would we be asking them to choose?
The right side.
And the right
So,
side is different for everybody, depending on where your situation is. And that's why I can't point a finger at somebody if I'm not out there marching along with them and doing as military people, as military leaders, we lead by example. I'm not out there leading by example. So how can I expect that young man or that young woman to do what I'm not doing?
so all of those are very, very, very important perspectives.
Abiola, can I just
Uh,
chime in very quickly and
sure,
say,
sure.
I know I said I was going to disappear from the beginning, but I just want you all to know that this is such a rich conversation. And that question, although Abiola may not acknowledge it, that very question is what brought about this panel discussion.
It definitely was. It definitely was part of that. Yeah.
Abiola and I were on our way to a
A
training,
retreat.
a retreat with the
Yeah.
museum, and
Yeah.
given the current climate, I asked him. I'm not a former serviceman or woman, but wanted to know his perspective on that very question, because it's a real question. It's a complicated question. I think the perspectives will vary a lot, but really wanted to like have the opportunity to hear from former service men and women, and perhaps it would have been great. I think it would have probably been harder to get like a real answer from current servicemen and women, but it's something that we want to know, like, and I hear both of you. I hear what you're both saying, and I get it. So yeah, I just wanted to chime in and say that.
I know we were kind of running low on time, but I wanted to have and I guess kind of an extension of that. I want and again to for everyone to chime in because I know we got a couple of questions. I guess we're kind of we're running a little over. But to all of you,
We're doing fine,
in
Abiola. It's flowing. We're good. We're
oh, we
good.
are? Okay, great, 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 great.
Mhm.
So I do want to okay, so then two questions and then we can get kind of into the Q&A. So Dr. Gill, wanted to get back to you real quick. Um as again, being as an academic and as a commissioner, your work preserves this kind of the history that we've been discussing, as well as the history that it's being created in front of our very eyes. So, um, how do we move beyond just honoring the legacy of Black service men and women? Uh, how do we progress to actively using it as a tool for education, um, inspiring the next generation, just overall progressing us, progressing our communities and society as a whole?
Before I answer that, me do a bit of a PS on the last question.
Sure.
The president is doing something illegal.
Okay.
Deploying National Guard troops should only be done under three circumstances. One, I think, is invasion of a foreign power. I'm not familiar with the terminology, but it has something to do with civil unrest and when federal laws can be enforced.
Mm-hmm.
So for the most part, the National Guardsmen don't want to be there. They realize it's their job.
Mm-hmm.
The people realize that it's their job. I've been in New York at Penn Station. They've been there. I've been in Washington. They've been there downtown. And
Yes.
everybody's going about their business as though they're invisible. I don't know of any incidences with the National Guard. So I think they realize that we're all in this together, trying to get through this awkward situation. So everyone's helping everybody live, everyone's helping everybody do their job. In terms of education, there was a question, what would we say to a young man or young woman who express interest in going to the military?
That was going to
Well,
be a question for everybody. Yes.
But I've in this day and time, I've run into several people over the last, I'll say two decades, last 20 years. And when they come to me with that, they've already made a decision. They've thought about it. They've talked to people. They've researched it. And I want to do all I can to help them be successful. Anytime somebody wants to do something, that's a great motivation for their success. The military has proved a great training ground. I know dozens of people who, after they came out of the military, continue to work in the military and provide for their family as a civilian. In terms of our TC program, especially the one at Morgan, that is probably the most outstanding ROTC program in the country, if generals are any judge. Morgan State University ROTC has produced more generals than any other school,
Oh, wow. Okay.
save for the military academies.
All right.
And they also have produced the first African American female officer in the Air Force.
Okay.
And a direct commission to the Air Force.
All right.
She's a friend of mine, and hopefully we can do this next year. And I would
Yeah,
love for her to come
I would love it.
and share some of her experiences.
Definitely.
She's very successful. A lot of success things happen later on.
Sure.
But initially in 58, 59, that was a very turbulent time for her. And lastly, in terms of enlisted people, the military is the best training school in the world. They train you very well. I discourage people from going into the Army, but the other professions are very techy for the most part.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, Dr. Gill. And yeah, we'll definitely talk about bringing your friend on for next year. Hopefully, we can definitely do this again. Um, but if anybody else has anything to say about what they would say to, because I've had those, and I'll talk about my own experiences for a little bit. I've been in public places in uniform, and I've had kids, I've had young people approach me about wanting to go into the military, and usually I'm like, well, why do you want to do it? Like, what's your intent? Um, I had a friend years ago who was into metaphysics, which I'm not, but she would always say that everything in this world starts with intent. And so my whole I've kind of thought about that in terms of what I do and why I do things, and that's what I kind of try to pass on. Well, what's your intentions? What do you want to do with this experience? Because regardless of whatever branch you do, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, whatever your job is, it's going to be an experience, and Uncle Sam will put you through some things, as we all, regardless of time, regardless of environment, regardless of any of that. I mean, and in talking about deployment and everything, I remember feeling what particularly what Jeanette was saying in terms of being conflicted. I was out by this point, but when the Freddie Gray riots happened in Baltimore, and on one hand, because I had been through that area where the situation with Freddie Gray happened numerous times. I've again had attended UMBC in undergrad, and have lived off and on in Baltimore for some time. So I would see I saw people, and then people that I knew who were activists, that type of thing, that were, and nobody I knew, as far as I know, was trying to destroy anything, but definitely protesting when it happened. But then also, um, the very same guys that I went overseas with, people that I had been deployed with, getting called up and sent to counter the civil unrest. And it was, and I'm watching this, I'm at work watching this. I wasn't in a position to, to take off to go and observe myself, but I definitely remember seeing that and feeling definitely awkward and uncomfortable about, among other things, about seeing how everything played out. Um, so now, to any of you all, if again, a young person, young black person, man or woman, came to you and say, "Hey, I'm interested in going into the military." I know Dr. Gill spoke his piece, but the rest of the panelists, did anybody else have any
I
take
would
on that?
I would say, unfortunately, I would be hesitant to encourage any um, minority person in this current administration to go into the military, only because, as we see, people are being asked to do things that are not legal. So I would
Mhm.
worry about that as we discuss that current conflict. But any other type of environment, I would say for me, the best thing that I did for myself was join the military. My first assignment was to Misawa, Japan. So I did not have my mom and dad, to bail me out, to take care of me. I met my husband in Japan. We had our son in Japan. And it was one of the best experiences because we had to learn to be self-sufficient. First, I had to be self-sufficient on my own, and then as a couple, and then to raise a family. So just having that opportunity to have our son be born in Japan and have that broader worldview, um, to expose our kids to something outside of the United States, or for some people outside of their city or town. Um, it's invaluable. So I would encourage anybody, join the military. It's any opportunity where you can reinvent yourself time and time again. You get in one job, you don't like it, you can cross train to another job. There are so many benefits and lifelong friendships that are developed out of the military. And if you don't know what you want to do with your life, if you're trying to figure it out and you can't do it on mom and dad's dime, or you just don't want to do it on mom and dad's dime, um, join the military, go to school, get that free education, get that world view, and it makes you a better person.
And in many ways, the military was a good thing for me, even though I don't like the military and I don't like militarism. But it was good for me because it really not only taught me leadership skills in a hostile environment, uh, it taught me one of the most important lessons that I learned, and that is that if it's wrong, it's wrong. And even in the military, if it was wrong, I stood up. And that was very, very, been very, very important in my life because I was young. I was 17. I got out when I was 21. And it made me many things, particularly philosophically and how I looked at the world. Uh, and I carried that with me. I was very active in the civil rights movement. I have, with Rap Brown, I have faced the National Guards before. So, uh, and and at the same time, I have a grandson who's in the Navy ROTC at Hampton, and I asked him, well, why are you doing that? I said, I don't particularly, I would not personally, given the context and the role that the United States is playing now, I would not encourage anybody to go into the military. I just wouldn't do that. But at the same time, my grandson, he's down at Hampton. He wants to be a pilot. He's flying, and I don't discourage him. I don't, I just with my kids, and I have all daughters. I've encouraged them to stand up, to be true to what they believe in, and to be willing to pay the consequences. And trust me, I've been called a communist on the floor of Congress, which I've never been a member of the Communist Party. I've all of the things that you said about people having to eat and what have you, I've felt all of that. But I've always stood up, and particularly in the world in which we live in today, we forget that everything that they were doing to us in the 50s and the 60s before that was legal. So if we weren't willing to break the law, we wouldn't have what limited rights that we have. If we weren't willing to stand up against racism and what have you. And in a weird way, because I was very young and had to deal with that in the military, and at the Catholic chaplain, for instance, he had a section of books called Suggested Officers Reading. And I was an enlisted man, and I used to enjoy making him turn red by taking a book out of that section. He would just get red. He would just turn red when I took, because I was an enlisted man, not because I was Black, but because I was an enlisted man. And so it taught me a lot. I even went to jail in the military in Pensacola for standing on a corner giving a speech. So, uh, so, so I guess what I'm saying, if you're going to go into the military, don't sacrifice your values and your integrity. That's what I say to my grandson.
Well, so and speaking on the particularly the educational piece, so I know and Mac, I'm sure. Go ahead, Mac. Go ahead.
Yeah. So for me, when I first joined, I personally had to get my parents, because I respected them, their blessing. And when I got their blessing, then I pretty much made up my own mind and my own decision to actually join. And to be honest with you, the military has been very good, really good to me. I bought my first house with the VA home loan. So it's been very, very good. It's been very, very good for me. So for anybody wanting to join, I would say, go in with a mission, knowing exactly what you want to do.
Exactly.
And follow through with what you initially joined, on the reason why you initially joined in the first place. Follow through. A lot of people say it's what for school. That means you go finish your schooling, or at least as much as you can while you're in.
Definitely. And
Yeah.
just speaking on that, so again, when Mac and I were in Kosovo, it was actually two other people that we all kind of hung out together. So it was our own little clique of four of us, and we made it a point to take classes. We had opportunities to take classes both online and on post, and we all made it a point to do that. Um, and then just to kind of support each other, whether professionally and academically, both inside and outside of the military, um, and not even just in a formal academic sense. I mean, definitely, I can say the military was educational for me. Just, um, I mean, Eastern Europe was not on my radar, but spending 6 months there, I mean, just a month in Germany itself was great. And then another 6 months in Kosovo and some of the other places we were able to visit. There were opportunities to visit Greece, Bulgaria, other places, and then in Iraq, I was able to meet um, Iraqis of African descent, I mean, that's an experience that I wouldn't have had anywhere else, except for in the military. There would have been no reason for me to go to Iraq and meet Iraqis of African descent unless, Uncle Sam gave me, that free trip over there. So, um, I mean, there was definitely uh a lot of challenges, a lot of low points. Um, uh, but I can say that my time in the military was as there was uh, almost as many positive, points as there were negative. So it definitely is definitely led to the person who I am now. So want to see if we have any questions from the audience. If anybody has any questions, let me we'll look in the webinar chat and see if there's any questions. I know that the one uh, Miss Kiki Wilson, she said, "So where does the Constitution come into play? What are military branches taught, and how are they trained?" They said the military, I guess, meaning military personnel, have taken an oath, or did they not? Comparing them to the average citizen is interesting. Well, I mean, to answer that question as best as possible, um, I mean, at least in the army, and I assume in other branches as well. I mean, the Constitution does get taught to a point, um, but I think uh, even more so than the Constitution is the idea of following orders, and I guess that's kind of where the conflict comes into play. Like, yeah, this the Constitution, the rules, and this rule of law, and laws of war, but you know, um, 9 times out of 10, you're expected to follow whatever order from your sergeant or whoever else, and again, that's where the conflict comes in. Um, and it's definitely a trying time right now. I mean, I would, um, I mean, I would personally feel very, very not at peace with being deployed into Washington D.C. Um, I mean, I'm in Union Station pretty often, so I've seen the National Guardsmen there and certain other parts of the city, different metro stations, things of that nature. Of course, I've seen the similar deployments in other cities, and to be perfectly honest and part of my language, I'd be pissed if I was called up for something like that.
Do you know we're
Uh,
kind of also in a catch-22 because we're supposed to uphold the Constitution
right.
and protect the U.S. against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That's the oath
Cool.
we took.
Yes, yes, yes.
Depending on what side of the political spectrum you're on, depending
Hmm.
on what news outlet feeds you your source of information,
Hmm.
your domestic terrorists, as they want to label us,
Hmm.
um, you know, it's a gray area for some people when it shouldn't be.
Sure,
So
sure.
so we're asking these young people
Hmm.
to follow the orders of the President of the United States, who is ingrained in you, no matter who the president is, from day one of basic training, that they are your commander in chief. So from right off the bus, all of us in basic training, and we're learning our hierarchies, and the president is the commander in chief, and we're supposed to defend the U.S. against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And your commander in chief is telling you these people are a threat, and you
Hmm.
haven't formed your own thoughts as a young military person.
Sure.
You're learning, just as you are about yourself and your morals and values as you're growing in the military, and we're asking them to make decisions that are life altering for some. So it's really, you know, how do we need to reshape it, I think, and how do we support as prior leaders? How do we support? How do we educate? How do we help these people who could be in conflict with the orders that they're receiving?
And it's interesting that you speak of it that way, Jeanette, because we actually had a question from another member of the Commission of African American History and Culture, Dr. Brian Morrison, who and I'll read his statement slash question. Historically speaking, looking back over all the wars the U.S. has been involved in, how have African Americans struggled with the decision to defend and fight for a nation that has not stood for their rights as human beings, let alone citizens? And I think that I know from various, because I read various books. Like Tom, I took my time to read a lot of books while I was when I had my time off, but particularly a lot relating to the Black experience in the military. And I know that for certain generations, um, entering in the military was a means of proving that collectively Black people had as much right to everything that being an American was as anybody else. That was our, you know, uh, for lack of a better term, putting skin in the game. So
But
go ahead.
what do you do when, for instance, the president says that we're in a period of post-constitutionalism, that the Constitution does not matter anymore. It's obsolete. That's what they say.
Mm-hmm.
So on the one hand, they're telling you that, you know, all this stuff about the Declaration of Independence and what have you, we were never
Mm-hmm.
included in that to begin with. And
Agreed.
it's, we were never included in that. That's where you say you have to make decisions, and we have to teach young people how to make decisions. I mean, we discussed these kind of issues around the dinner table with my kids when they were growing up, you know, but and we don't need to send our kids off blindly into a situation. And context is always important. The
So
context in which we are living today is very similar to what led up to the Nazis taking over in Germany. And so to tell people, if you can't respect the man, respect the office, the man is in the office. And so, you know, we can't act like something is not happening when it's really happening.
indeed.
And of course, in terms of the military, in the 60s, some of the best militants were ex-military people
Very much so.
because they knew how to strategize, they knew how to organize, and what have you. So the military has a role, but we have to always put it in context. And you're going to be in this country, you cannot overlook race. You cannot. You can try, but you can't. Everything that they say, whether it's the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence, all of that stuff was written while we were enslaved. It didn't include us. Now, we've been fighting to be included,
Right.
but it didn't include us. And so when I hear people say, our country, our Constitution, it isn't. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
I'd like to make a comment.
Yes, Dr. Gill, go ahead.
I'd like to support Mr. Porter when he spoke about race, which a lot of people don't want to talk about, especially in the printed media. But the situation that exists now in Washington, D.C. exists because most of the people who voted in the last election didn't want a Black woman in the White House. And to go to Commissioner Morrison's question, I'm glad he mentioned that. It reminds me of during World War II, and my father was in the U.S. Army. He was stationed at Tuskegee Army Air Force Base. I think the Pittsburgh Courier had a double V, victory, victory overseas and victory at home.
Yes.
You know how bad the soldiers were treated when they came back to the United States. And that continues today. It has continued today. It still continues today. Double V. Because we're always fighting, wherever we are in the service, we're always fighting for respectability back at home, as well as doing our job wherever we're assigned.
But you know what? I think some of that discussion, yes, we always have to remember, how we got here, but I think some of it is generational as well. Something that you said, Mr. Porter, that just struck a chord with me is when you said this is not our country. And this is my country. My father fought for this to be my country. My mother sacrificed for this to be my country. I served 21 years in the military for this to be my country. Yes, there are people who don't want it to be my country, but that's their problem. I'm here to stay. And I think we need to get to a point where we are changing the narrative. One of the things that I really appreciated about the artist talk at the Banneker-Douglass Museum, the Banneker-Douglass-Tubman Museum, Jabari Jefferson, he made a comment about talking to our youth and how they are so tired of hearing us talk about the same old stories. They want a new narrative. They want us to give them something to fight for, something to look forward to, not always painting us as less than, or we don't need to be here, or this isn't ours. We need to claim what is ours. And when I'm reaching out to these kids in these underserved communities that live around me, I want them to know they have just as much right to be here as the people in the more affluent neighborhoods, the people that go to the more affluent high schools, the kids that don't go to the Title I schools that they go to. This is their country. This is our country. And until we start redirecting that narrative and instilling in those kids that they belong here, we're going to lose them. So we need to find a different way to one, carry on our past, because we need to remember our history, but we also need to cement that we belong here and we're not going anywhere.
Well,
So
I think that's true. The question is, how do you, first of all, how do you teach them not only that they belong here, but we got what we got because generation after generations fought for it. They didn't give us anything. So unless we're teaching these kids the truth about what they face, the truth about how we got where we got, we got here because generations after generations in the military and out of the military fought for the right to stay here, whether it was Malcolm, Dr. King, or Chappie James, or Benjamin O. Davis, anybody. These people all fought within the military and outside of the military. And one of the things that we're not teaching our kids, they don't really have any history in the schools anymore.
I agree.
They've taken out everything, the knowledge that guided each generation out of the schools. These kids are going to have to learn too that the behavior that they're exhibiting, shooting each other and what have you, is dead end.
But until we teach them that they come from greatness, not that they come from slaves, that they come from greatness, that they come from veterans who served their country honorably, that they come from kings and queens, that they're capable of anything that they see anybody else doing, we will always lose them. or they will always lose us. So
Well,
we have to step up where
the
we're
fact that
going.
we were slaves is a fact of life.
Absolutely.
I tell my African friends, I said, you know, those of you who participated in the slave trade, you put John Coltrane on the boat. You
But
put Frederick Douglass on the boat.
as long as you're also telling them that they come from greatness.
Well, that John Coltrane, I think, is greatness.
Absolutely.
Richard Allen, who started the AME Church, is greatness.
And just so, and for the sake of and to add with regards to Mrs. Duncan, Jeanette Duncan is also a descendant of Benjamin Banneker, part of the namesake of the museum, um, and so you'll probably be seeing more of her as we plan some descendant oriented activities in this upcoming year. So it was something that was a pleasant surprise to find out the first time that she visited the museum. So
Thank you,
um,
Abiola. And a lot of those descendants are actually on this call. A lot
okay,
of the
well,
family members are here.
we appreciate your family coming and supporting, and hope they'll be able to come to visit the museum soon.
Happy
Um,
belated birthday to Benjamin Banneker. I believe his birthday was celebrated yesterday. So
yes, it was. Yes, it does. I
your
sent
cousin.
I sent a happy birthday text too, Jeanette, like a happy birthday to your ancestor. Um, Sabria, how are we doing time wise?
We
Or do we
are
have to?
going to have to wrap this up. It's such a
Okay.
fruitful conversation, and I knew I told you all we get started, and as soon as we get started, we're done because it's everything is so good. It goes by so quickly. We will be sending out a recording of this video. I'm sorry, of this program, and we'll probably include some um, additional information in that recording. And if there are any questions that are missed, perhaps we can follow up in our follow-up email to the attendees with those answers. I'm not promising that. That's not something that we've done in the past, but perhaps we can start doing that now for the sake of time. This was such an amazing conversation. And yes, I'll give the mic back to you, Dr. Gill, because I said I was disappearing.
Are we completely out of time?
Well, I mean, if you have one more comment to make, Dr. Gill,
Yeah, I like to, for those of you who don't know, there's a new monument honoring Black Revolutionary War soldiers planned for the State House. It's
Yes.
expected to be completed next year. This was a result of Stephen Exley, who's one of the past commissioners. He was working with the archives to create a proposal that was put before the State House Trust and was unanimously approved. It would take the place of where Judge Taney's statue was, which was erected in 1874. It wasn't taken down until 2017. The sculpture from California has already been chosen. And my last comment is for you veterans. Come join NAVVETS, National Association of Black Veterans, Chapter 53. We meet at Morgan State University in McMecken Hall the third Saturday of each month. Our major event is the Buffalo Soldiers Banquet, which is in February. So for all you veterans, come on down and help us with the homeless vets, help us with the vets who need more disabilities. A lot of things you can do, but come on down. National Association of Black Veterans, McMecken Hall, the third Saturday of the month. If you need any other, have any questions, call me.
And we'll share that information in a follow-up email. And then Jeanette, did you want to share as well? I know you have something, an initiative coming up to support veterans as well.
Yes. So thank you for that. My husband, who's sitting over here to the side, he's also a 10-year veteran of the U.S. Air Force. And seeing what is going on with our local veterans here in Anne Arundel County, we are partnering with a local restaurant called Bread and Butter Kitchen and the Navy Fleet Reserve Club, and we will be providing 100 meals to military service members and their families. Date to be determined. We're trying to lock that in. It is either going to be the day before or 2 days before Thanksgiving. And we are going to provide all the fixings. It's all going to be fresh so that people can take it home and cook in an environment with their own family. So the turkey and all the trimmings and everything else, we'll be handing that out in coordination with the Fleet Reserve Club here in Annapolis to 100 military families.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And Dr. Gill, just so you know, it was your buddy, Professor Stephen Lee, that let me know that you were in the military. I didn't know about that, about you. I had spoken to him because I actually wanted him to be
Thank
part of
you.
this discussion. And he said, well, you know, Dr. Gill is you know, former military, so he might be better to participate. But we do hope to do an event with him.
Abiola, your sound is going out a bit.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. But yeah, hopefully we'll be able to have an activity with Professor Lee come this year with respect to the 250 activities that we have planned. So, so yes. So again, thank you again. First, I want to thank Sabria and the Banneker-Douglass-Tubman Museum staff for supporting me in this endeavor. Again, this is something that I've had in my heart and mind to do for a long time. Originally, this was going to be, and I have to acknowledge and give thanks to Holly Garema at Sankofa Video and Books in DC, because initially this was going to be a physical panel discussion there, and I couldn't, for whatever reason, couldn't get enough people to want to speak to their experiences. So again, from that conversation that Sabria and I had, just walking en route to a work-related activity, and she said, "Oh, well, we could do this. We could do an online discussion." I said, "Okay." So again, appreciate that, and I appreciate all of you taking your time this evening. All of you are busy. All of you have a lot going on. But taking time to share your experiences and your thoughts and your opinions. I appreciate that very much, and hopefully we can expound on this and grow and continue the engagement.